The Putin regime has been widely exploiting the vulnerabilities of global social media platforms, using bots and trolls to promote specific stories and narratives. But they are not alone. Once developed, the same techniques can be used by other powers, international and local, to subvert democratic institutions and warp public perception of the news and politics in their countries. But hybrid digital warfare is not limited to propaganda. It also includes cyber attacks, hacking, and stealing intellectual property, and worst-case scenarios such as taking down infrastructure and utilities. Welcome to Silicon Curtain. Please like and subscribe to help new people find our amazing speakers. And if you enjoy the content, please do consider supporting us by becoming a patron or buying me a coffee. Hural is a cybersecurity veteran, incident response expert, and director at UnderDefense. He's recognized for his extensive research on threat activity and incidents related to Ukraine and Taiwan, with a deep understanding of cyber warfare from Russia and China. His expertise lies in dissecting attacks, delving into their timing, objectives, and impact. Andrew, welcome to the channel.
Hey, Jonathan, pleasure meeting you today.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. Topics around sort of tech and cyber are something I very much look forward to, given I'm a bit of a tech sort of nerd, and my day job has elements of technical stuff to it. So I think this is going to be an absolutely sort of fascinating conversation. Well, let's start with you, because you have quite an extraordinary skill set, and work for UnderDefense, which is a leading company in the cybersecurity industry. Could you just give a little bit of a description about UnderDefense and, of course, your own skills and experience?
Indeed. I started my cybersecurity career, I think it's about 15 years ago, as a cybersecurity researcher. I've been doing things in offensive and defensive security, and about 5 years ago, I joined UnderDefense. At UnderDefense, we actually have different divisions of a team. So one team called Red Team, these guys do everything concerned with offensive security, so-called ethical hacking. So they have a huge expertise in how to get into the system and make sure that companies, when we actually help them, do all needed thresholds to protect them. On the contrary, the other part of a team, so-called blue team or the defenders, this is the SOC team or MDR team. There are various definitions in the modern world for this type of activities. These guys are actually defending companies, so doing everything that is possible to make sure that we detect the threat at the most earliest stage, or do everything to prevent malicious actors to get into the system. This way, having within UnderDefense these two expertise of offense and defense team, we have a unique chance, to match them, to make sure that these teams study and teach each other to excel their cooperation. And this way, both teams actually show and prove themselves to be one of the best on the market at the moment. With this, when cybersecurity, active part of cybersecurity war between Ukraine and Russia started, UnderDefense was actually at the front line of these events, because we've been partnering with organizations and companies within all the world, including Ukraine. At the moment, for example, our portfolio consists of more than 65 systems around the globe, and working in 24/7 mode, my team provides protection to these companies.
That was going to lead on to my question, really, was one, the evolution of these expertise, and is war, and not just a full-scale war, but of course, this has been going on since 2014, which many people overlook. Is this an accelerating factor in the evolution of both defensive and attacking technologies?
I must admit that since the full-scale war started in 2022, and even before, when actually in 2014 we had the beginning of this offensive operations starting from Russian side, we've been seeing a huge amount, an increase in the most sophisticated attacks that they were like developing from something like a small seed to a huge plant. And it's not actually an exaggeration, because you should have noticed that no one spoke of, for example, things like supply chain attacks a lot even 10 years ago. But at the moment, nowadays, it's the reality that we need to face. We also, when UnderDefense and other companies do triage, they mostly focus on a couple of things. First of all, being a context. Context meaning when an incident happens, what is going on within this incident, what systems are targeting, and so on. You also look at the not only the context, but also victimology. So who is the target, meaning the state, the department, maybe the organization on a company. And you also analyze so-called TTPs, so techniques and procedures, because you want to have information on how these malicious actors want to get into the system, what they do, how they persist. So when you match these three areas together, you actually can point finger on the person, group, organization that is staying behind it. Of course, it's not 100%, guarantee, but it's like a fingerprint for a person. It's you can always say that, for example, this kind of group or this type of group uses this type of TTPs, and they target mostly, for example, financial sector. And as I mentioned, it's like a fingerprint. You can see them, you can show them, and you can do some countermeasure for this.
And I've been following the news very intensely, obviously, especially Western news and news in Russian, Ukrainian channels that have sort of Russian speakers on them as well. I can't remember a single news item that really goes into detail about cybersecurity or any kind of hacks that have taken place. First of all, I mean, I wonder why this is, but secondly, are there any notable stories of Russian successes or successes on the Ukrainian side in beating back attacks? Because I assume the scale of attacks through full-scale war is substantial. We don't seem to hear an awful lot about it.
Jonathan, as for me, there is plenty of stories, but those stories differ depending on who is the author of the story. So what I actually mentioned on the nowadays situation within the media coverage of this situation is it all depends on what side you take. And you can always find an information on how brave and inventors might malicious actors from Russia be. On the contrary, when you look into some other media sources, you definitely see the articles and information about what defenders, the Ukrainian side, did. I could probably advise you visiting CERT-UA web portal. They have an amazing information and statistics and data coverage on each and every incident that happens within the media and not only media environment in Ukraine-Russian cyber war.
Well, let's put a link to that. Pop the link over. We'll put it into the description here, because I think one of the challenges is that many people are watching the more mainstream media, and it's likely to be in the specialist media and industry media where these issues are discussed at great length. The question then arises, I mean, for you and even the responsibility in wartime, does it fit more on government to protect infrastructure, or is it private companies that are investing, or is it a mixture of both? Does every organization, institution now need to have a clearly defined policy and an approach to some of the attacks that we'll look at in a minute, the different types of attacks? But first of all, the clients, who needs this protection?
Jonathan, that's a great point, because what I wanted to emphasize that everyone can be a victim. It's not a matter of you being a government, non-government, small or medium business, or maybe you are a large enterprise. What we see at the moment, that malicious actors, they do not distinguish between you being a financial institution or, I don't know, maybe media or social technology company. It doesn't matter. As long as you can be used, as long as they can use and leverage your alternatives and possibilities, that's something they would do. For example, based on H1 2023, we've seen the increase in the number of alerts on more than 100%. So the security incidents doubled within this period of time, within the infrastructure that we cover. And what does it mean? Where do they target? There is a huge number for security incidents that actually target media, that actually target government, that actually target something from, for example, financial institutions. And what I want to emphasize here is that, what happened with the world when the COVID hit? I think that first of all of us were a little bit scared. We were distracted. We didn't know what to do and where to run. Everyone tried to stay in his own house and thinking that solid walls will protect them. But actually, we figured out as a society that it doesn't work well. We had to do some kind of vaccines, and that's when we actually start to return back to the normal life that it was before. I think it's probably the same with cybersecurity. Each and every company has to take care of their own cybersecurity posture. And as soon as we understand it, as soon as we try to put some countermeasures to malicious actors, that's where we start fighting the battle. It's not actually a winning, but it's actually a good start to fight the battle, to make sure that, the offensive side, whoever these malicious actors be, I'm not actually speaking about the country, about the APT groups or whatever. I'm just talking about cybersecurity crime as a fact. So as long as they see the countermeasures, as long as they see us being united, that's something that definitely helps us to stand, to fight back, to survive. Because I'm really positive that if we just lose it, if we just leave it as is, it will be in some case, in some dimension, the end of the whole era for humanity, because the consequences might be very, very crucial for the whole development of civilization if we just fail to continue on our cybersecurity journey.
Well, let's go into some of the tools that are in the Russian cyber armory. And a related question, when the full-scale war began, there was a significant asymmetry in conventional warfare. So, for instance, Russia was reported to have 20 times more shells, artillery shells, etc., and artillery pieces. Through clever, sophisticated, and innovative tactics, that asymmetry has now been not just reduced, but apparently reversed, with more artillery shells being fired by Ukraine in the last month than Russia. So that's an extraordinary sort of change in that asymmetry. Was there a similar asymmetry in cyber warfare when you compare the resources and techniques available on the Russian side to the Ukrainian side at the start of the full-scale war?
We should probably look at the historical aspect here. It's always been said that a lot of smart guys, inventive guys, but the guys who actually follow the dark side, so the one who want to probably do some malicious actions instead of doing the right choice, they used to either originate or work from Russian controlled territories. And that happened in a long time ago, even before the war in Ukraine broke out. I think that our major fight began in 2014. That's when the invasion of the eastern part of Ukraine happened. And I think at this period of time, we were well unprepared. Facts of non-Petya virus being spread all around Europe. The fact of cybersecurity attack on the, for example, energy grid in Ukraine in 2015, 2016. These were a part of a well-prepared cybersecurity operation. And this operation, this cybersecurity operation, it was governed, controlled, and maintained by military operations, by intelligence operations from Russian side. So these guys were actually focusing on targeting this sector, this environment, targeting Ukraine. At this moment, I must admit that we were not prepared. It's probably obvious. No one thought about the war. No one was focusing on solid cybersecurity defenses. But after 2014, we've been investing a lot of time, efforts, people into actually developing this sphere in Ukraine. And when the full-scale war happened, it wasn't that the effect wasn't the same as in 2020, as in 2014. It definitely wasn't, because we already had some at least basic countermeasures. We had the informational background to fight. We were actually focusing our efforts to help protect businesses and organizations. On the other hand, there was still that's what I see actually around the globe at the moment. A lot of companies tend to think that they will not be hurt by any type of cybercrime, that they are not relevant, they are not important, they are not interesting to these cybersecurity malicious actors. But actually they are. And as the full-scale war started, we've seen that the attacks, they were targeting for each and every segment, each and every sector of economy. And it was extremely interesting from a cyber perspective, the research perspective, to see how they developed, how they actually grew up, how they were getting more and more sophisticated. We've been analyzing one of the ransomware that was used within the attack on cybersecurity grid, one of the ransomware that was used to attack energy sector. And we've seen how it developed from a small and not harmful piece of the code into a very strict, sophisticated, and malicious software. It's been growing and developing, and we had to put some countermeasures on it. Unfortunately, it's always, if in each and every fight, a person that attacks always has some kind of advantage because they do the first move. And in a lot of cases, cybersecurity measures are being reactive. That means that you actually put some responses after your opponent does a move. But in this case, in Ukraine, we put some proactive cybersecurity measures, and we help organizations to actually build their cybersecurity walls around their companies to make sure that malicious actors, if they even get inside, they get tougher, that they get noticed faster, and that we have time to put our defenses even more solid than it is.
And has that given you a commercial advantage? This need to be better, faster, more predictive. I'm guessing that gives you a commercial advantage when you come to sort of build the products or solutions that encapsulate these defensive techniques.
If we speak about the context of cybersecurity war, the first thing you think is that you want to make world safer, and it's not always a commercial side that you want to focus on. I know that in a lot of cases, you just need to persuade and have a solid arguments before the company chief information security officer or whoever is in charge on the cybersecurity side from their organization, that they just need to take a first step. And in a lot of cases, it's not even money or as we mentioned, the commercial part. It's more the solid definitions of their business might be impacted, that they might stop operating, that they will lose their customers, that they can just disappear from the world, meaning that people will not trust them anymore and will not take their products. And this is probably one of the most important parts here. And I do challenge it all the time. I do challenge it because as for me, it's obvious. It's obvious as having the walls and the doors within your apartment, and that you lock this door when the nighttime comes. But a lot of people still think and believe that it's okay to open the doors and put the welcome sign on top of their door so that everyone comes in.
And this is a really good point because, we talk about commerciality here. And of course, organizations need to make commercial decisions based on sort of economic logic, whereas Russia is not necessarily making commercial decisions when it comes to the scale of investments they make in hacking and cybersecurity. Now, we'll come on to the different, let's say, benefits or reasons why Russia does this. And of course, one part of it is to steal intellectual property. So there is a commercial motivation in some of the cybersecurity and hacking expertise that Russia has developed. But the major part of it, I assume, and it'd be good to get your view, is because it's strategic, it's geopolitical, it's something that does not have an economic logic. So do we have an idea of the sort of scale of resources they tip into it? And do we have an idea of the breakdown in terms of the sort of different objectives within their cybersecurity activities, or cyber attacking, rather than security activities?
Jonathan, it all depends on what we put as a final goal for this cybersecurity operations. Because that information is the money of a modern world. So actually, aren't we speaking that they actually look for money and search for money when they get the information from different sources? That's their main target, and that's where they actually make money, not spend money. That you should just look at this from the different angle, from a different perspective. And I strongly feel that the amount of money being spent on cybersecurity operations are being paid off in number of times, because the information and the intel they get, the level of getting into different politics, society, organizations, or whatever has been, or whoever has been a target, that's what actually is the primary goal, and that's what the most precious and most valuable for them.
So it's a business to an extent. I mean, this is fascinating, because conversations around Russia's activities around the world, whether that be Wagner in Africa or other places, tend to focus on the geopolitical aspects. They tend to focus on, the ideas of Russian nationalism and all these things. They tend to focus on the sort of values that are being pushed forward, inverted commas. But beneath it all, as you say, there is a business model. I mean, what Russia is propagating is not just power and its own sort of version of so-called values. Underneath it all, actually, what they're propagating is a business model, ways to make money. Obviously, the character of that often is closer to what we class, I guess, as piracy rather than classical capitalism. Is it the same here then? That actually it's a mixture of geopolitical or strategic objectives, but it also is money making?
Think about it in a way that, who is a hacker? When you think about hacker, whom do you actually imagine it to be? A guy in a black hood sitting in front of his computer? Well, actually, that's an ordinary soldier in cybersecurity world. But the modern cybersecurity malicious ransomware gangs, ATP gang structure is quite different. It's an enterprise with a legal department, with a sales department, with a support department, with people who handle different type of operations. Some people do intel, some people do research, some people united together. It's a whole structure. Do not think about it as one guy sitting in front of their computer. That is why, these APT groups, they had this structure long before the war broke out. But after the war, actually, an active phase started. They've been, all these groups acting on their own. They were, lone wolves, lone organizational wolves, not one person, working on whatever objectives they had. Now they are being united under one umbrella. You have one solid fist that shows these groups where to focus on, where to strike. And that's what is most dangerous here, because if it was, first of all, the ransomware, mostly ransomware focus to make money, hack, get money, hack, get money, spend this money on whatever goods you want. That now at the moment, it's not only getting the money, it's also getting resources, getting attention, getting into the system. We've been actually studying different tactics that are being spread within Ukraine at the moment, and we see that there are two main dimensions or two main focuses that malicious actors are targeting to at the moment. And first being cybersecurity espionage, so slow operations, long-term operations, when you work undercover and do not show yourself until the last final point where you actually need to take an action. So you actually work like a, intelligence organization to gather information and send it to whoever wants this type of data. The other part is the one that we use to when we speak about malicious actors and cybersecurity operations in the civil society. Hack, get information, dump system, make sure it's not working. So we see two main objectives and two main dimensions they work at the moment. And depending on the APT group that stands behind it, we see that there is different objectives for this. So if you want, for example, to make sure that the company organization is not working, that is being compromised, let's say Informational Agency of Ukraine, you hit this agency, you put your huge banner saying that this organization is being hacked, and people in the world, they stop believing this portal, this newspaper channel, a TV channel, or whatever. On the contrary, other team, they just try to follow and get as much information as possible. Again, the same media organization, but you do not hack it in a classical way. You just stay undercover. You get all the information about their grid, about the information that is about to be posted. Maybe you get information about people who are like informators and send information to this agency, and so on and so on and so on. So it's as a defender, first you want to understand what is the key objective or goal behind this operation. And something like DDoS attack or something like even ransomware, it might be just a cover, and you need to look deeper. You need to go into the subject. You need to get and understand what is actually staying behind it. And that's where we get to the most interesting point that I want to stress out, that you need to take care of your cybersecurity, because you never know if you are a victim or you are just a tool to victimize someone else. And it is one of the most important things that I wanted actually to share with you today.
And that's absolutely fascinating. And of course, it makes a far more complex picture, because when I started looking into this topic, I very much was stuck, I guess, in an older view that this is a largely state-sponsored activity. The infrastructure is state-sponsored, et cetera, et cetera. But you're painting a picture here of quite a complex mixture of state actors and non-state actors, and those who are delivering or even monetizing this ability to attack in a whole variety of ways. That is almost like an anti-business, an anti-corporation, which, as you say, I mean, people will be shocked by the idea that you will have all the departments and functions and processes that a legal corporation would have in the West. And here you have an anti-corporation that is really designed essentially to do piracy, but utilizing those tools of capitalism to do that. And the techniques of running and managing a business, it's not actually unlike when you really dig into it, the mechanics of how Prigozhin's troll factory worked. Again, you've got an offensive, anti-law, anti-freedom process going on, but it's run like a business with all the mechanics and the need for sort of profitability and accountability within it. Is this picture much more complex, perhaps, than people think it is, and disturbing in some ways?
I'm 100% positive that even my, humble opinion is not so close to what the real situation is. I do believe that the judgment that I make, and they are based on the, cybersecurity operations, offensive operations that are being taken at the moment. That's what they are based on. But I do feel that there is a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and especially this cooperation between government, non-government organizations, how they handle it, what is the subject, who is the most targeted and valuable person within these organizations. That's something that probably future analysts will be possible to dig in and get. I think I do like different historical channels, and that's where you learn a lot. That's where you know that each and every action that was taken, for example, by a governor or by an emperor or whoever was in charge of this society, let's call it this way, it's been backed by something. There was a motive to do this. Sometimes it's a personal motive to be the highest, the best, the greatest. On the other hand, as for me, psychological motives, they have a huge impact, but there is always something on behind. Maybe money, maybe I don't know, in current world, information, maybe just leveling up your country, your organization, or your gang, whatever you call it. It might be a different wording for this, but as we dig into this situation, as we go into this fact, we see a lot of different facts. As you mentioned, this troll factory, it was amazing. Did people 10 years ago or 15 years ago could believe it's possible? I don't think so. Again, if we look for a media, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, there was a newspaper, there was a TV channel that you actually trusted. Could you believe that these guys on TV channel, they are telling lies in front of all the people? Probably not. Yeah, they might be, a little bit, they might change their opinion, they might shape it in the way they see it, but still there was a lot of facts. And at the moment, when you search through internet, when you dig into your famous or your best messenger that you go to, there is a lot of information, and you need to make sure that this information is true. It's not misinformation, and that it's actually something you can trust.
And I think, one of the things we're trying to emphasize on this channel is that Misinformation is rarely accidental. You may not know the origins of it. You may not know how it's propagated or by whom. You may only be able to guess at the motives of the person or people that are propagating it. And those motives may change from the original source to the people who then amplify it. But nonetheless, as you say, you need to go into social media with awareness that there is a manufactured intent to hack your brain, to change the way you think and change your perception on current events. Now, we've talked mainly about Russia, but who else is involved in this effort to hack our brains? Which other entities, which other countries?
Jonathan, in a lot of cases, we see either Russia or Chinese actors. That's a majority of cases that we face. Of course, there is a number of other countries being involved. There is, malicious actors working from, I don't know, I do not want to point a finger, but let's say Latin America, African continent, or other countries. But you need to make sure that these guys, they are not only using IP of this country, and it's not only a person sitting on the physical territory of a country that you remember about victimology and about doing the right definition of what APT group stands behind it. That's the most interesting part, because in cyber world you can be, I don't know, whatever continent, whatever country you like, but you can still do cybersecurity operations on behalf of a company, of organization, of APT group that you belong to. And that puts us in a situation where we actually need to understand that cybersecurity crime is global wide, and it's not local for Russia, and Russia fights Ukraine at the moment. It's okay. I'm being in United Kingdom or United States. I'm relatively safe. It's far away from me. Not at all, because they can have malicious actors, first of all, being next to you. Secondly, they are not limited or bounded to the territory of a state they work at the moment. So I probably should emphasize that for malicious actors, they are working global. They are being more and more sophisticated at the moment, developing their expertise in the fact that when you have one ruler, one person, or one organization that focuses your attention, that's where they develop a lot. It's not on, a lot of different gangs, different APT groups working from different continents. Not at all. They're being united, and they're being focused on getting into our infrastructure, getting into our society, and making our life harder.
And talking of making life harder, as a theme, when we were preparing for this, that absolutely fascinated me, and it was the mention of the idea of freedom. And I think, is there a difference in our perception that actually puts us at disadvantage? Because our societies, and obviously I include Ukraine in this, because fundamentally, from visiting Ukraine and speaking to many people, it seems there are few cultural differences between let's say the sort of British mindset and Ukrainian, and that is fundamentally is a yearning for freedom and be able to express themselves. Also, it's a deep mentality. I would classify it, and this is a very gross simplification, but it's a win-win mentality. It's like you can go into a scenario and everyone can benefit from it. It seems to me that the deep psychology of Russia is a win-lose, that they don't have a concept of the win-win. And it seems that's also coded into the KGB and FSB, Putin, and their calculations. So we may always be looking for a rational motivation in cybersecurity or cyber hacking by Russia. The objective may simply be to weaken us. Their perception is that by destroying us, by reducing our wealth, by reducing our freedom, that in itself is a win for them, even if they don't gain materially in any sense. Do you see that playing out? Do you see this as one of the challenges?
I clearly see that the classical divide and rule, that is what's being carried out by Russian Empire first, Russian Federation at the moment, and some other countries around the globe. As you nicely mentioned, there is a win-win situation when both companies, people, organizations can work together and achieve more. On the contrary, there is a model where one can achieve something because of or using the other one. And this is the approach that actually I see at the moment being used by a lot of even malicious groups. What they do, they hack you to get your money, to steal your money. A lot of people just want to do nothing and get everything. And it's sometimes I'm being scared about it, because I've seen that a lot of people from young generation, they tend to being so maximal in their attempts to be rich and famous, but on the contrary, they feel that there is not enough thing that they do at the moment to reach this level. So they want everything fast. And I think that what we speak before, that when you actually divide nations, when you actually divide countries, continents, that's easier for you to fight with these countries and these continents to make them your subordinate. And that's what I actually fear, because I feel that, I had a great study there was a wonderful research, and in this research, there was information on how a trust within one nation helps this nation to develop and grow. And they made this clear lines that GDP of well-developed nations is linked to the trust level within the society. And what I see at the moment, that when cybersecurity operations from malicious actors happen, they actually break this trust. You distrust your neighbor, you distrust your relatives, you distrust partner countries that you worked for at the moment. And it's something that, scares me a lot. It means that the world can actually go deeper into the dark side, because we will be, each and every of us alone, standing in front of a people who are being united. And unfortunately, these people are at the moment are representing the malicious side, the one that we do not want to follow. So I would definitely want to, to think about this in a way that each and every country in the world should probably, first of all, figure out what they want to do in future in terms of their cybersecurity defense operations, and secondly, unite with other countries who have the same mindset, and that's what helps us to fight this plague.
I think that's an incredibly interesting idea, and maybe for me this is the most important part of this conversation, and that's the link between trust, freedom, and economic health. So in a sense, you cannot have freedom without an element of trust. We see a lot of that breaking down. We see Russia pouring petrol on the flames to try and erode trust. The net result of diminishing both of those things, freedom and trust, of course, is economic damage. And I don't think that's a link that most people are making. It's interesting that emerges from a study of cybersecurity and its mechanics. Now, I don't know how much of the Soviet Union you remember, or how much you lived under that. I obviously didn't, but visited Russia at the very tail end of the Soviet Union when it was being dismantled. It seemed to me that one of the driving forces behind the Soviet system was to erode public trust. You could have elements of trust when you're in your own apartment and you've closed the door and you're with your closest family. But when you're on the street or the stairwell or the train or a school or anywhere else, you had a different persona. And that was because the entire system was designed to erode trust and cooperation, to really prevent any kind of political activity whatsoever. Do you see elements of that culture transitioning into Russia's offensive cybersecurity operations, that sort of mindset?
I think, Jonathan, that we need to say that a lot of malicious actors, they actually come, or they are the outcomers of this society. And definitely it stays somewhere underground, their motives, underground their deeds, underground what their plans are. It's really hard, to distinguish between the people that were brought up and bred within Soviet Union and the ones being now part of a Russian Federation or some other countries that actually do this kind of malicious operations. But I clearly see that people who go this way, who tend to become malicious actors and try to invade companies, organizations all around Europe, all around the world, they're actually probably having something from what you mentioned. Because otherwise, why don't you just sit down, get a good job, try to figure out what you do next? You probably just want to do something in the other way. Why doing it the other way? I always think that there is a root for this, and you need to go deeper. But it's hard to distinguish between all these between all these situations. Again, as for my experience, I cannot share it because I probably never lived in this type of society. I've heard a lot. I've heard a lot of talks about it, about the greatness and the poorness of this society, and so on and so on. But when we speak about the roots and how they grew, I think that probably there is a reasonable idea in this as well.
Well, the last topic I wanted to touch on is sort of forward-looking, or looking forward to future threats. Where do you see the next generation of threats coming from? And specifically, I'm thinking here about large language models. People will know that as sort of ChatGPT and so on. And of course, the next generation of those are going to be significantly powerful. There's kind of exponential sort of evolution happening there. We've got quantum computing, quantum encryption, and various other aspects relating to sort of AI generating generative code and so on. How do you think, what are the various tools we're going to need to cope with these future threats? And are they going to evolve in a sort of fairly linear fashion, or are we going to see a sort of exponential growth of the complexity, range, and scale of threats?
AI, their usage, their development is really terra incognita. A lot of people discuss it nowadays in the world. All conferences around the world, each and every speech, they probably touch this point at the moment, and it's something that we need to do. Actually, it's important. Why it is so? It's something new. I bet people in 50s, when nuclear energy was developing fast, they were probably in something similar. I don't know if they had the chance of discussing it as we do at the moment, having all these live sessions, traveling all around the globe, getting the updates on each and every situation that happened. That's a benefit, or maybe not a benefit, we should think about it, of a modern society. But I do feel that we need to speak about it, and we need to leverage all different options. I do see from a cybersecurity perspective that AI can do harm, but it also can do good things. So I think that, and what I see, that malicious actors use, for example, AI to develop sophisticated social engineering attacks. On the contrary, the same AI can help you to detect the threat when it starts even, or maybe detect the other AI that generated this type of social engineering attempt to hack into the system. We just need to be cautious. It's always, when you do a new technology, you want to know, and you want to have thresholds and countermeasures when something is going wrong. And I feel, and I'm scared a little bit of this, that different development centers are not having this stop mechanism that we have, for example, within nuclear plants all around the globe. So it's something that we need to focus our attention at, and we need to be careful about it. I understand that because this technology is being developed within the private organizations mostly at the moment. Again, if we look at the historical aspect of different technologies being developed, it was mostly government, a country that was the owner of a technology, and it then went into public. For AI side at the moment, we see that there is a private organizations doing it, and I've been speaking about COVID today, but who knows what happened with COVID? Was it the intentional leakage of this disease, or maybe it was actually something accidental? We never know. And I wouldn't want the same thing to happen with AI. Imagine yourself sitting in front of not Andrew at the moment, but someone else pretending to be Andrew and talking from the AI perspective. And again, you would need to think if you could trust this person or not. You would probably need to, the question about your experience and about what you did in the last 10, 15 years wouldn't be a judgment for you at the moment. And there is pros and cons for this. And I definitely feel that we need to be cautious, and we need to take care when we judge the development of this technology. As an innovator for myself, my personal opinion, that I would want it to be. I would want it to be used carefully, but used for a good, intentions. Imagine, all the possibilities it can bring us in terms of, if we speak about cybersecurity, in terms of protecting from malicious actors, putting thresholds, reacting even faster than the person does. And you just need a couple of security analysts who just verify the activities that AI propose you to do. That's something that will help us a lot in future. On the contrary, it might be very dangerous.
And of course, some people, and this includes some scientists, are saying, let's slow down, let's put the brakes on in terms of development. But I think what you've described and what we've been talking about is that's a very poor idea. That's almost the equivalent of appeasement of a tyrant, which is that if we pause or slow down the ethical development of AI, the malicious development of it and the applications that come from it, well, they're not going to slow down. They're not going to put the brakes on their development. If anything, if they see us slowing down, they may well speed up. So we are in a kind of technological arms race where we cannot afford, if we count ourselves as the good guys, if we take an ethical approach to this development, we absolutely cannot slow that down, because we have to match development for development the malicious side, the dark side of this race.
Definitely. If you do skiing, you know that you need to to take care and be aware of avalanche. And that's what happens at the moment. As for me, we do need to keep pace. On the other hand, we need to make sure and do everything possible that the dark side of AI development stays slower, or maybe they just could not leverage it. It's okay, they can probably develop it, but as long as they will not be able to use it, to maybe due to resource availability, due to energy sector constraints or some other factors. I'm not thinking about it at the moment, but in general, as long as we have a threshold and a mechanism that can stop it or maybe slow it down a little bit, that is something really important for us. Again, any type of weapon, you can use it either for good reason or for bad reason, and that's what happens. And it all, again, depends on how you look at it from a different perspective, from a different angle.
And the last question, really, again, it's a forward-looking, and occasionally I try to end on more positive topics, because if you look at the day-by-day news, there's so much horrific stuff going on. But when I was in Lviv, one thing that really struck me was you're in a country in wartime with the economy under vast pressure. You have a certain impression of what you're going to see. What you don't expect to see is business parks being constructed, huge investments in tech and IT, and a sort of absolutely ballooning economy in Lviv as many companies relocate both from the east, but also investments coming in from the west. And it's turning into a logistics hub, a tech hub, a cultural hub. That's quite not what you expect to see in a so-called war zone, is this extraordinary development and investment in the future. So how important do you think the tech industry and the tech expertise that have been developing over the last few years in Ukraine will be moving forward, both for its security, its economic development, and its integration into Europe, European rule of law systems and institutions?
We've been touching the trust issues today within this conversation, and I'm actually thankful for our partners within Europe, United States, United Kingdom, and other countries, that they actually do trust in Ukraine and do trust in our country and in our organizations, and it actually helps to maintain the good level of technology, people living in the country, and also fighting off this active threat. Ukraine is a large country. It's more than 1,000 kilometers wide. That's why when you speak about war zone, you need to take this into account. Definitely, there is a missile threat. There is always a fact that any part of a country could be hit because of these barbaric actions being taken at the moment. But we still need to sustain our country. We need to make sure that it works well. We need to make sure that we show as our example that this modern situation must be fought off. Because if we leave it as is, if we just, put our hands down and say that, well, these guys are a huge country, a lot of millions, billions of dollars behind their budget, and so on and so on, and a large number of weapons, well, yeah, that's how you lose. But if you want to stay up, if you want to focus on victory, that's what you need to do. You need to develop, even in spite that something is going on. That's why I'm really positive that, thankful to countries, organizations, and people, individuals who support Ukraine, support tech industry, support IT industry, we have actually a possibility of developing. We've been having a wonderful resource centers, great minds within Ukrainian society that help develop a lot of modern technologies all around the globe. And we need to continue to put this part of our investment into this kind of development, into this kind of relationship all around the globe. Again, we've been speaking today that cybersecurity, and not only cybersecurity, we are being global now. So, as long as we keep up, as long as we support each other, we can stand off each and every plague that happens all around the globe. But the every moment that we are being separated, the every moment that someone is trying to send in the disinformation that tries to divide the society, the countries, the people, even within one organization, that's when we start to lose. And I just need to emphasize again that we are not alone here. We are all together, standing together and fighting together to make sure that we live in a future world, safer world for our kids, at least, maybe even for our grandkids.
That's a great place to stop, and it's an unusually positive place to end a conversation on this channel, at least. Andrew, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your expertise, and of course the incredible work that you and your colleagues are doing, which is so important to, as we said earlier, sort of freedom, cooperation, and tackling threats. Thank you for everything, and Slava Ukraini.
Slava. Thank you so much, Jonathan. My pleasure.